Hey everyone. If you've been curious about how psychedelic-focused VCs operate, you'll definitely want to watch this next conversation between myself and Tim Schildt, a partner and co-founder of Palo Santo. In this conversation, Tim tells me about a few things his firm is looking for in psychedelic-focused companies and a few things they're not looking for. It's a pretty riveting conversation. Be sure to tune in. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Dales Report. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Tim Schildt. Tim is the co-founder and partner of Palo Santo, one of the largest psychedelic VCs investing in an array of businesses across the psychedelic landscape. How are you doing today, Tim? Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to meet you, Amanda.
Great to meet you as well. And where are you speaking to us from today?
Porting in from New York City. So, I know the nice plants in the background can be a little bit deceiving. I promise they are not psychoactive as well. But, New York, we're based in both New York City and Chicago, are where the partners are based out of.
Awesome. Very cool. So, Tim, I'm really thrilled to chat with you. I've been hearing a lot of information about these psychedelic VCs. You know, people focus specifically on investing in these psychedelic companies. And, Palo Santo is definitely at the top of my list as far as wanting to learn more. So let's dive in. Can you give our audience a little bit of a background first to start off? So tell me about Palo Santo. How did your co-founders, Daniel and Tony, and yourself come together? And what is the vision behind the company?
Yeah. I'll give you a little bit of a personal background, which I think has bearing on Palo Santo as a fund and in a lot of our strategy. And then, how this sort of Palo Santo genesis story as well. But for me, professionally, started my career in investment banking, largely focused on life sciences. So spent some time at JP Morgan, then Greenhill and Company, but was focused on the life sciences sector. So certainly very heavy in biotech for my early career. Later on, moved to Madison Dearborn Partners in Chicago, focused largely on healthcare services during my time there. But suffice to say, my career has been largely focused on the healthcare space, which I think has been really beneficial for psychedelics, since we're seeing these go largely a healthcare and even biotech type route for the Atais and Compasses of the world. And as we know, the way you vet those types of businesses is very, very different from most industries. Definitely different from cannabis and crypto, especially, which I think you see a lot of cannabis and crypto money starting to swirl around psychedelics, seeing it as kind of the new frontier. And I think a lot of people are going to be sorely disappointed in terms of at least how they select companies and pick the right opportunities. So that's professionally. Personally, have always had a fascination with mental health. Have had family members, friends who've really struggled. And I think we've all seen how lacking the current standard of care is in a lot of ways. I mean, there really is a very high unmet need around depression, anxiety, PTSD, you name it. So it always had my, antenna up to what is going to be the next breakthrough therapy. And as I started, also my partner, Daniel Goldberg, Tony Eisenberg, and we actually now have a fourth partner, Zack Lomis, who joined us. It was about 4 years ago. Awesome. All of us very serendipitously around the same time started seeing a lot of the data coming out of Johns Hopkins, NYU, Imperial College London, you name it. And for our own different reasons said, holy crap, there's something here. For me, coming from the life sciences world, I was like, wow, once you go from animal models to human models, and it's as efficacious as we're seeing, that's really, really interesting. So started exploring the space, networked like crazy. And when COVID hit, that was really the catalyst where we said this is going to take off, and we think there's going to be a renewed focus on mental health. So that's how we all came together. We met through that journey and kind of mutually networking and, having finance guys, which there weren't too many finance folks in this space 4 years ago, all meet. It was the perfect pairing in a lot of ways. So it's been an exciting journey. We've got about 45 million raised to date. We've deployed 18 million so far into the space, into some of the most innovative companies in psychedelic biotech and beyond.
That is very cool. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's really interesting how so many companies in this space have sort of come together and flourished over the pandemic. That's not uncommon for me to hear that, this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I decided to jump on it, during the pandemic. So I love that.
Yeah.
So over the last year, we've heard a lot of announcements about emerging VCs focusing specifically on psychedelics. And, obviously, you've seen that investing by generalized firms has been kind of slow. Can you explain the rationale behind creating a VC that is focused on these businesses? What does it offer psychedelic companies that a more traditional VC might not?
Yeah. I think a few things. Now, with that said, I mean, we do come out of the Bridge Investments ecosystem, which is Daniel Goldberg's other VC fund that he's been running for over 10 years, and they've certainly had a successful track record. So we've got a lot of VC background that we bring to the table and VC type knowledge. This isn't really a true fund one, I'd say, in that regard. So at least for Palo Santo specifically, there is certainly that benefit of this isn't our first rodeo of investing in early stage companies, knowing a lot of what they go through and everything. But with that said, part of why we did a Palo Santo as its own vehicle rather than just having Bridge Investments investing into psychedelics is we did think a pure play focus on this ecosystem. We thought that made the most sense. I mean, in a lot of ways, these are subverting the current care paradigm in healthcare, both from a biotech standpoint, the fact that you have psychotherapy combined with the delivery of a lot of these, that is very, very novel compared to, almost any medication advanced previously. So there's a lot of novelty there. And then when these do roll out, and we're already seeing this with ketamine as kind of the first experiment, and MDMA will be next, even that clinically will look very, very different. So since this is such a paradigm shift relative to what you've seen out there previously, I do think it makes sense to have a vertical specific, industry specific fund focused on the space. And there's also just a lot of domain knowledge too. I mean, these are such novel mechanisms of action, especially at the 2A receptor, that having deep knowledge around that we think makes a big difference. Whereas even for generalist biotech funds, usually they're looking for precedent and they're looking for, what is the most validated mechanism of action. And in that domain, it's largely SSRIs. So this is so novel. We think having a lot of that domain knowledge, having the right advisory base as well, Chuck Nichols, Julie Holland, David Sherman, John Graydon, folks like that goes a long way. And having very specific, receptor level knowledge that helps us in a lot of ways at these companies.
Absolutely. And, one thing that I noticed about Palo Santo that caught my attention was that advisory board, all these people that come from these different parts of the industry. I was going to ask you about this later on, but why don't we just jump into it now? Tell me about how those people on your advisory team, the role that they play in helping Palo Santo make these important decisions. How important is it for Palo Santo to have researchers, scientists, doctors, people that you just mentioned, like Julie Holland and David Sherman, having them on board? Does it give you an edge?
I think it definitely gives us an edge. And on top of that, I do have to say Julie Holland, Chuck Nichols, Dave Sherman, John Graydon, all those folks are phenomenal people, first off, to work with. So that's part of how this all came together. I mean, we all really jived and there was chemistry there. But beyond that, yes, I mean, they are quintessential in our diligence process, I think opening doors to a lot of the right folks. And even beyond that, we certainly cultivated a pretty wide academic network at Palo Santo of researchers, folks that we can call up, where if we need to get the answer on something, we know a lot of the right folks to call, or Chuck, Julie, everyone knows them as well. So they are incredibly helpful. I mean, Chuck has been great on the pharmacology, David Sherman, great on medicinal chemistry. Julie Holland is a practicing psychiatrist, so she brings a lot of perspective on clinical realities and the realities around the delivery of these or even off-label usage of medications, but is also very, very dangerous on the pharmacology as well. She got her degree in pharmacology. So across the board, they are, wherever we have any shortcomings in our own scientific knowledge, which we've done our own fair share of research to have a pretty good high-level understanding, these guys are able to go much, much deeper than anyone on the team can and really help out tremendously in our diligence process.
Awesome. I like that you use the word dangerous to describe Julie. That's pretty cool.
Julie's a badass. I don't know if I can swear on a podcast, but
yes, absolutely.
She's awesome. So she's seriously phenomenal on all fronts. But they're great.
Awesome. Yeah, she should put that in her Twitter description. Once described as dangerous.
Yeah.
So I want to ask a little bit about how Palo Santo chooses to invest its money. So by that, I mean, which sectors within psychedelics? We can silo this industry off into, providing access through clinics or drug discovery. Would you say that Palo Santo is interested in all of these different silos? Is it kind of strategically investing in these different areas?
We are. We remain open to all, and I think this is going to hit on a variety of verticals. I mean, we've certainly seen tech make a lot of inroads. We're investors in Kasana Health. Journey Clinical is another one that's a non-biotech play, which we absolutely love. Outside of that, there's companies like Osmind, Maya Health, which are more EMR, EHR. Well, we've certainly entertained that before. There's going to be a whole clinical infrastructure. I'd say we haven't been as focused on clinics normally. We were early investors in Field Trip. Beyond that, we haven't really done more clinic plays. It does tend to feel a little bit more like a private equity type bet. And models have yet to emerge. We've yet to see how profitable psychedelic clinics will really be when, just looking at previous case studies. So we'll entertain it. We haven't been as active. 80% of our portfolio is biotech, though. I will say that. And I've been a big, I don't know if proponent is the right word, but, I've certainly been pounding the table that I think the suite of psychedelics that we've come to know and what are most common, psilocybin, LSD, DMT, 5-MeO, ketamine, and a few beyond that, mescaline, I put in that camp. I think there's going to be a generation beyond that. I think that's kind of the first generation. I think there will be a next generation that improves on a lot of the generics. So we've been investing really heavily in that and searching for novel, what we call NCEs, new chemical entities, that have not just stronger patent protection, but I do think have a better pharmacological profile as well and improve on a lot of the shortcomings of Gen 1 in psychedelics. So 80% of our portfolio is in biotech. I do foresee that being the case going forward. I think CNS drug discovery went through a real trough over the past decade and is seeing kind of a renewed renaissance here. Because our understanding around how to pharmacologically profile and just understand CNS drugs has improved dramatically. So I think that's a trend that will last for decades to come in many ways.
80%, that's a lot. That's a significant.
It is a lot. Yes, we are largely, we're I'd say, psychedelic biotech is a lot of what's in our lane. And some of that, too, is where we think we can generate alpha. Also, I mean, we just have a much better understanding of biotech, and we've got the advisory base as well that has a very deep understanding. We just think that us, relative to other folks out there, that's where we can develop a much deeper understanding, both around how to value these companies at the right stage of development. I think there's been a lot of misconceptions around valuation in biotech since it is pre-revenue. So, novices to the biotech investing world aren't as great there. And then just around the pharmacological understanding, it's something where we've got much deeper understanding relative to other folks out there. So that's kind of our niche in this space where we add a lot of value.
That makes a lot of sense. One company that I was really excited as a journalist to see in your portfolio was Double Blind, the magazine. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yes, we are a little bit outside of the...
Yeah. Very cool.
That is in the 20% category, which, and there still will be, there's plenty of money to deploy into non-biotech companies. Yeah. Love Shelby, love Madison. They're great.
That's funny. I'm actually on a call with Shelby later today, talking about psychedelic journalism.
Oh, are you? We'll tell her we said hi. So, yeah.
Totally.
Our joke is, our joke, they have executed phenomenally. And our joke always is that, we're largely biotech, so most of our companies are pre-revenue for the next 5, maybe even 10 years. That Double Blind is like one of our few very profitable companies. That it's like
I love that. That's amazing.
Exactly. So they've done a great job.
Totally. I actually am a subscriber, and I have an issue sitting right over there on my desk.
Same here. I'm a subscriber, but I am much more biased than you. So it's
I guess so. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the due diligence side of Palo Santo. So when you're looking into companies, what would you say are a few factors that are non-negotiables? So the most important things you're looking at within potential portfolio investments.
Yeah. One big one that we shifted away from in the very, very early days of Palo Santo, I think the opportunity set was much smaller, and we didn't love this trend, but there was certainly a trend to rapidly go public in Canada. Now that's kind of a non-negotiable for us. When the pitch is, hey, And you can usually see it in the slides. They show a cap table. They quote the round in terms of price per share, and it's like, we're going to go public. It's like an immediate no. I think that misaligns incentives. I think a lot of companies get orphaned on Canadian stock exchanges, and just given the aggregate capital needs to get a drug through all the way through clinical trials to commercialization. Aside from, I think, BioVale, if I'm not mistaken, that's like one of the very few precedents I know that has achieved that on a Canadian stock exchange. I don't know of any other precedent. So I just, that's kind of an immediate no. Team is a big element for us, of course. So having the right, the right founding team that has been through biotech previously or surrounded by the right advisors, and, a proper CMO who's filed INDs, NDAs with the FDA. It has deep experience there. That goes a very long way when folks are, again, coming from kind of cannabis, crypto, or even someone who just had a really formidable psychedelic trip and now wants to found a psychedelic biotech company for the first time, have a tougher time with that. My joke is I like to see biotech people coming into psychedelics rather than psychedelic people going into biotech. Oftentimes, it's so regulatorily fraught. The capital needs are so large. The scientific understanding is so much more than a lot of other industries. That's a big piece. Yeah. And then some data to chew on. I mean, the first line of defense is always 100%. Academic papers that people can point to. I had this conversation with one company. I remember they were positing a very interesting indication, non-mental health related, with a known psychedelic. And I was like, this is great. I mean, this could be phenomenal. Show me some papers. And never followed up, never sent anything through. It didn't have much to back it up. There's got to be something mechanistically that you can point to, both from an understanding of the disease you're going after and, what are the key targets around that disease, and then the drug you're looking to advance. Why is that drug hitting those targets, and why is it better than what may already be on the market as well? If people can't answer kind of that first line of questions, it's usually a pretty quick no as well. And sometimes, a no in VC can always be a no this round, but we'll come in at a later round. Sometimes it's just too early for us, and we'll always come in later once they've generated a bit more data around that compound.
Okay. Interesting. So I want to go back to the first thing that you said. I live in Vancouver, where a lot of these companies go public. And I want to ask.
Sorry, I hope I didn't offend any friends.
No, not at all. This is actually something that I've noticed and been really watching.
Well, and note to your friends,
so
I think they're leaving a ton of value on the table. I mean, you're seeing all these companies orphaned at, sorry to cut you off, just at like a $20, $30 million valuation.
I would love,
Yeah, and you versus you look at CNS comps or, in biotech, and you even look at some of the bigger psychedelic companies, you do a few private rounds outside of MindMed, which is kind of in its own camp. You do a few private rounds and you take your time over 3-4 years. And I think the upside potential around valuation is much, much larger. I totally cut you off there. So sorry that I mansplained that practically. So I'll turn it back to you.
No, that's totally fine. I've just noticed this trend and been very amused by it, and also noticed the fall off, and then seen some similarities between how companies popped up here in cannabis and then sort of disappeared. So, I've been waiting for someone to say kind of what you just said, and say that, for us, that's a no, we're not into that. So, thanks for explaining that. I think that's
well, and I think
it's largely not
on the optimist. Yeah, on the optimistic side, if they really are, invested in the long-term potential of the company, that's why I make the comment of, I think you're leaving a lot of value on the table. I think the reality is what you said. If you want a quick exit, I mean, for folks who want to engineer a quick exit and, have a $20 million, $30 million valuation IPO and bank some quick money off of that, I think it is feasible, but that completely from an investor standpoint, that misaligns incentives dramatically. Then in biotech, you're looking at an 8-year haul, even if you're going into phase 1, and someone's going to cash out that early on in the company. I just don't have confidence they're really going to take this all the way through to commercialization. It just incentives are massively misaligned as well. So from an investor standpoint, there's also that element.
Totally. Well, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you and getting to learn more about Palo Santo, about psychedelic VCs, but specifically about how you guys operate. I think there's some really interesting stuff there. So thank you so much. Hopefully we can have you on the program again someday. Cheers.
Yeah. Appreciate it, Amanda. Thanks.